your fire burn. Let your fire burn.
Hey guys, I just want to take a very quick moment and say thank you. Several of our listeners have gone onto our webpage at porcupinepov.com and have gotten on the support us link and have helped us out financially. We definitely appreciate it. A few of you have used our Amazon affiliate link as well. Again, thank you so much. That's helping us tremendously. We've even seen some of the 5-star reviews coming out. So if you get an opportunity, do me a favor. Go and check out either our website at porcupinepov.com under the Help Support Us tab. If you make any Amazon purchases after clicking that link at the bottom of the page, it will help us out. Amazon gives us a little bit of money, but it doesn't cost you any more. Or go to your favorite podcasting platform, wherever you're listening to this now. Give us a 5-star rating. We definitely appreciate it. Now, on to our show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Porcupine Perspective. I am joined in studio by my co-host, Evelyn. Evelyn, how are you doing today?
Doing okay. It's been a really busy week, but it's nice to finally make it to the weekend and, I don't know, hopefully try to get some normal stuff done at home.
You consider this normal? This is normal? I am so sorry.
Well, it's becoming my new normal, so I guess you can phrase it that way. But no, last weekend, I know we didn't have much time to record. My kids had their first long course swim meet for the upcoming late spring, summer season. And it was actually kind of cool. You guys got to join us and kind of see how all that works and live with the smell of chlorine perpetually in your nose for the next 6 hours after it's done. And,
I think it might have been longer than 6 hours. That was kind of something to behold. I had a completely different idea in my mind for what a swim meet was like. Granted, the only swim meets I've ever seen have been like on the Olympics, the Summer Olympics. And it's nothing like that at all. You've got kids jumping in, jumping out, lots of noises and sirens going off and whistles and confusion, hysteria, and all in all, it was probably a lot like what Congress goes through, I would imagine.
Oh, Lord, I don't even want to think about that.
But I would have to think actually the swim meet might be a little better organized than our fearless leaders in Washington. But there was something I definitely wanted, and if it's okay with you, wanted to talk about, and it was what your daughter asked me.
What was that? She asked lots of questions, so.
At the beginning of it, I don't know if you remember, we had the misfortune of sitting by the American flag. It was on the wall. It was a small one. You remember?
Vaguely. I mean, it's such a routine for me being in there now. I don't really notice it that much, but I will take your word for it.
Okay. We sat there, and I didn't think anything of it. You would think, I like to think that I take a pretty good... God, I don't know what the word is. I'm pretty aware of my surroundings, or at least I like to think.
You have a good sense of situational awareness, yes.
Thank you. That's a word. And apparently flags were not on my radar. Unfortunately for me, I was not facing the flag, but I was facing the direction that everyone would be facing when they face the flag at the beginning of every sporting event. Do you know what happens at the beginning of every sporting event?
The national anthem plays.
Yes, it does. And I had forgotten about that because I don't go to sporting events. I would much rather stay inside on my computer or go out camping or do any other thing. But for your kids, of course, it's fun to do. But I'm sitting there in my camping chair, drinking my coffee. And the next thing you know, I hear this music playing. And then everyone is facing in my direction with their hands over their hearts. And I'm like, oh, bother. This is going to be interesting because... Did you just
do a Winnie the Pooh?
I did. Oh, bother.
I really don't know which was worth you trying to sound like Winnie the Pooh or trying to do an English accent. That's rough. Let's not.
I was going to say, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think both together are equally bad.
Yeah, but it's like putting two gross ingredients together into a smoothie and then trying to drink it. They're both equally bad apart, but I mean, you just make it that much worse when you try to combine them.
Okay, shots fired. Shots fired. We're not even 3 minutes in this and you've already started in on me. That's fine. Anyway.
You know what, though? I'm just trying to make every listener out there who just did that visible face cringe as they're listening, just letting them know, hey, we all get it. It's all good.
Anyway, sitting there in my camping chair with my coffee, music plays, everyone in almost lockstep turns, hands over hearts, and they're staring right at me, and I'm looking at them but not looking at the flag. And I'm not going to lie. This is the first time since I have delved down the path of anarchy where I no longer respect the flag, because the flag is nothing but a piece of cloth, let's face it. And it's the first time I've had to, you could almost equate it to like a religious experience where someone is trying to testify in front of non-believers of what their experiences are. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all I've got to do is just pretend like I didn't know what was going on. I could turn to the flag, put my hand over my heart, and everything would be okay. No one would be none the wiser. They'd just say, oh, he wasn't paying attention. But I did not do that. And about halfway through, your youngest elbows me and says, why aren't you standing for the flag? Why isn't your hand over your heart? And I was like, kiddo, I don't do that. And she looked at me and she had this really questioning look on her face. You know the face. Mm-hmm. And said, well, then why do we do it? And that's when I got the elbow in the ribs from you, telling me that this is not the time or the place before their swim meet to talk about the fact that there's this piece of cloth hanging on a cement wall and everyone is... Yeah, it was really weird. I've got to say this. Well,
that, and it's also, like you were talking about last week and the week before, is trying to find that balance of when do you engage in that conversation, because with her, she's 7 years old right now, and she's going to take what she hears from you, and she's going to take it back to school, and she's going to share this new discovery with friends and these actions in the classroom that are going to negatively impact her for reasons that she is not yet old enough to understand. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It just, it begs this question. If we live in a day and a time in an era where it's safer and causes less harm to lie than it does to tell the truth, that indicates something. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk to your daughter about it. This is more of a conversation for you guys. I don't have a dog in that hunt, but it's almost, and I will say almost as weird as staring out at all these people that do not know each other, but they have this one common thing.
No, I get where you're coming from on that. And we had a brief conversation while they were doing their warm-ups back and forth saying, I didn't want to go into it. And I get that. And I know you don't always agree with our reasoning for not taking her down that pathway yet. But again, there are going to be questions and looks and things. And again, this is where that whole age thing came into place for me. While I fully support her doing what she believes to be right when it's the right time to do it, I also think that there are certain reactions that are going to be had by her peers and by her teachers and by the adults that will be around her that she is not going to understand. And I think it's going to cause her more grief and more harm than it is worth at this point in her life. As things continue to grow and change, as with our oldest, if that is her choice, then we fully support her sitting down or questioning it or discussing that with people as much as she would like to. She's going to be 13 this year. She is at a mental and emotional capacity to handle it better than a 7-year-old who just wants to know why everybody's looking at her funny and why her teachers are looking at her with a disappointed face. No, it's just, that's where I'm at with it.
And don't take this as me trying to convince you that what you're doing as a parent is incorrect.
I just know you don't always agree with it. And we're going to have those points, which is, I think, why it makes for some interesting conversation for times, because I'm not where you are all the time.
Right. And it adds some bruises to my ribs every now and then.
I didn't know they that hard.
This time.
I mean, I figured you have a bruise on your shin from the kick I gave you, but, whatever.
This is also true. However, and I get it, this is more of a commentary on society. You are absolutely 100% correct. If she goes into the classroom, she does not stand, she does not do the dance, she does not hold her arm in a certain way and have this respect for this piece of whatever. If she bucks the system, if she decides that she does not want to be, oh my God, what is the word where you're like a conformist? If she decides to be a nonconformist, she is going to suffer all kinds of emotional distress, because that is what, and you've heard me say it many times, that's what school's about. School's not about teaching you how to educate yourself. School is about conformity. Society is about conformity. But drawing back, like you said something, this is not the right time to tell her what's right.
Well, not even to, there's the big difference there. I don't ever want to tell her this is what's right. I want her to ask questions and discover what is right for her. Because what is right for you and what is right for me are going to be two different things, because we're individuals, because our experiences are different, because our beliefs fundamentally at times are different.
If you were to make a decision, and this is devil's advocacy, again, let's take the 7-year-old out of it. Devil's advocacy here. If you had to make a decision about what was right or wrong, would you want all the facts?
Absolutely. But again, I want those questions to be asked. It is important to me that she always asks the questions.
But if you never provide the answer, what's the purpose of the questions? And again, I'm not questioning you. This is devil's advocacy here. And I'm not stating you should. I understand where you're coming from. You know, honestly, I fall in the same boat. But these are the questions I want our listeners, because I don't think we have many 7-year-olds that are listening.
But you did bring up a point. Do you want her to have the right answers? Are the right answers for me always going to be the right answers for you?
If you were to make a decision, I'm not saying right by me, but if you don't have all the facts, can you ever make the right decision? On a pure chance, yeah, the odds are hopefully somewhat in your favor that you will make an informed deal. And I'm not saying you need to inform her. Again, this is a commentary on society. This is aimed at the listener that's listening right now. This is the question.
Agree. Again, I think this is just where, if you want to call it semantics, it really comes down to that. You can lay all the facts on the table and have two people who interpret them different ways based on their own experiences and opinions.
Correct. Would you say that you would accept any person's argument that teaching them to worship an inanimate object on the wall is ever right?
Okay, now here I think you're making a leap. Because again, you are teaching instilling your own beliefs and teaching the person your beliefs at that point, as opposed to laying all the evidence out and encouraging them to ask and seek the answer for themselves.
I'm still going to disagree with you, because what belief am I instilling? It's the other way around. You are instilling the belief that when the music comes on, they are supposed to stand and face this inanimate object with their hand over their heart for a specified amount of time. That is a belief. I am saying that there's no reason to do that, because let's just say...
No, I get that. I'm going back to the main point you were saying, where you present all the evidence and then you were going back into presenting the belief. I think maybe we're trying to make the same point and are explaining it in two very different ways, and each understanding the other to be meaning the opposite.
And that's always...
Yay, discussion.
Yay, discussion. But again, we can have a civilized discussion about it. All I'm saying is that and then we can go away from this. I am not suggesting we teach our kids to do anything that's going to cause them emotional harm or emotional distress.
Or social harm and stress, which then leads to those others, yeah.
Again, yes, same thing. I would never suggest that. What I am looking at, though, and again, repeating myself, the big thing is we need to, as listeners, as adults, question why this is even necessary. We have the power. Our children don't. We have the power right now to affect these kind of changes so that our children never have to make the decision on whether or not to be a conformist or nonconformist. That's it.
I agree with that. Okay, we're good there.
I'm still going to get kicked after this off of air. I know it, but that's fine. I
don't mind kicking you on air. I can throw something at you. I don't care.
I'd prefer you don't. It's hard enough editing as it is. Anyway, so why are we talking about this? Something's come up. Yeah, go figure, something's come up. I don't know how many of you guys have been watching the news, but there's been some new stuff coming out of the Houston debacle where the two people were in the house and they were raided by plainclothes cops. Shootout ensued and they both lost their lives. Unfortunately,
well, you talked about this a few episodes ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe we can go back and in the show notes insert which episode it was you were talking about, because I think you did discuss it in regards to, it was when the union head of the police department was talking about it and basically, saying, we're going to hunt y'all down. Yes. Anybody who does anything like this.
Anyone speaking ill against against police officers, we've got your number. We're going to be looking into you. They didn't say hunt you down, but I mean, there's an implied threat because they have all the force on their side. They have the guns. They have the judicial system and executive system on their side. But
just to catch everybody up as well, in this case, in case you have not gone back and listened to it yet, when they breached this home or broke into this home, a firefight essentially ensued, and several officers were injured, and the 2 people residing within the home and the dog were all killed based on a false claim, from what I understand, or a false report, right?
Correct. The guy who was actually the leader, the first one in the stack being when they go and they breach a home, they get in a single file line, and that's called a stack. He had the shotgun, which is fairly typical, and he was the one that encountered the pit bull that was menacing him, killed the pit bull according to their story, and then the male of the home came from the bedroom with a gun in hand, a .357 Magnum, and shot 4 of the cops. The 5th one was injured, like twisted his knee or something like that. Killed the husband, killed the wife, and that was the end of it. And it was all supposedly over them being heroin dealers. Come to find out, they were users. There was a very small amount of cocaine in a small baggie, a user size, and a small amount of marijuana that was also in the house. But the guy suffered a lot of head injuries while he was a machinist. And again, we don't have to go down that road, but they were really causing no harm to anyone. So there was a falsification of the findings of a confidential informant. They presented that to a judge, got the warrant, kicked the door down. Everyone's dead. You think case closed. We find out that, of course, everything was falsified. There was no drugs there. All the things that they should have had, they did not have. Scales, for instance, stuff that dealers would usually have, like a bunch of baggies, wads of cash. Again, none of that was there. Just some poor people at home, just relaxing, doing what some of our listeners may actually be doing right now. And then the next thing you know, within a minute, they were dead for nothing other than something that the government doesn't like. But the guy that falsified the evidence is now retired with a pension. He retired early with a pension. I did mention that, right?
You did bring that up.
Okay, yes. Twice. And since the investigation's ongoing, but they are done with the house, the police released the house back to the family to kind of collect things, get it straightened up, do what they're going to do. And they went in. There was a lot of evidence that was still laying around. The relatives did. They hired an ex-NCIS, which is a Naval Intelligence Commission officer who investigates crime scenes, to come in with a team of people and take a look and see what they could figure out. Now, again, this is all based on the articles that I read in the Houston Chronicle. They haven't released a full report, but the preliminary report states that they were able to dig just over a dozen bullets out of the walls. They were either .223 or .45 caliber. Do you remember what caliber gun the owner had?
It was a Magnum, wasn't it?
.357 Magnum. So either he didn't miss, or there was no overpenetration, or something else is going on.
Well, didn't they show all the bullet holes were actually coming from the outside as well? Not
all of them, but there were bullet holes that were over a foot away from the door. And it looked like they may have been coming from the outside, potentially. But when they triangulated when they looked at the trajectories, because there's no triangulation in this.
Trajectory,
yes. I leave me alone. When they were looking at the trajectories, they noticed that none of the shots fired by the owner were towards the door, and that the police officers weren't even at the door when they were firing in. Meaning it wasn't like they kicked the door down and all of a sudden there's gunfire. They were inside the house before things erupted. However, whichever. The dog, over 15 feet away from the entry. Supposedly the dog leaped at them the moment they kicked the door down, and that's why they shot with a shotgun. Right,
but devil's advocate, as you like to do, if they were already within the home, there is that possibility that one of the officers was much closer to the dog than perhaps it was. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Potentially, yes.
Just devil's advocate, as you do.
I get it, but the dog wasn't mid-leap.
Right.
It looked like it had been resting there, but again, devil's advocacy. I get it. We definitely need a healthy dose of that in our lives. So the they look around, they find 2 teeth. The guy that was shot and killed, the owner, was shot in the jaw one time, inadvertently or whatever, but the teeth were left behind. You've got all the bullets left in the walls. There was a shirt with 2 bullet holes in it that had no blood, that was marked as evidence with an evidence tag, but was left behind at the home in an uncontrolled crime scene. Now, again, maybe those bullets just so happened to hit this shirt while it was hanging on the wall or clothesline. Who knows? I'm not saying that they're faking stuff, but you would think it would be collected. That's all I'm trying to say. It doesn't look very good. And now the Houston Police Department is clamming up. They won't release any more information. They're taking a defensive stance while they're waiting the outcome of this outside source. Now, what's funny, and I don't remember the quote, maybe you do, from the chief of police. There was something about like they were going to expend or not hold back any resources while they're investigating.
I actually have this one written down. Hold on. Okay, police chief, when we are done with our investigation, we will have uncovered and turned over every stone to get at the truth, he said. We owe that to the involved officers. We owe that to the family of the deceased suspects. And at the end of the day, we owe it to the community. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Or maybe he meant literal stones, because there were no stones in the house. That they turned over the stones that they found, but since this wasn't under stones, that's not what he meant. In either case, one of the interesting, and I hate to use this word, but one of the interesting side reads I found is that Houston is one of the police departments that has to have a outside investigative arm. Want to know why?
There wouldn't be problems with the inside investigations, would there?
No.
Is that interior investigations?
Yeah, the interior investigations that they had found several cases where the case findings had been manipulated to favor the police department.
Well, that's typically what happens when you have, right, an inside investigation.
Absolutely. So we've either got a case of this outside investigative team either A, being influenced and trying to protect the police agency, or B, they're so inept at their job that they left all this stuff behind, or C, that there was no wrongdoing. The most likely is that, in either case, the two that I think are most likely do not speak very highly of having this investigative team, that being they're either completely inept or they're protecting the cops, because there's just too much. And again, I'm not saying something happened, I wasn't there. Right,
but I mean, this isn't something even remotely isolated to Houston. This is a pervasive problem everywhere. That's, I think, one of the reasons that the Black Lives Matter movement exploded the way it did, is because these problems with the, and is it inside investigation? I keep thinking it's something different.
Internal investigation?
Internal investigation. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was bugging me. But the results of so many of these internal investigations where you're like, oh no, he was attacking us, and yet there's clear evidence that he was shot in the back because he was running away. I mean, these are very common things that were happening again and again and again and again. And so the fact that now external sources are starting to be used, I think, is, number one, the first and a very important step into hopefully starting to correct this. But I think it's like one of those things. If you catch your kid in a lie, great, you caught them. But how many times have they gotten away with it before that point? You only get, this is, I think, the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg?
The tip of the iceberg analogy comes in, where you can only imagine how often this has happened and how many times things have gone wrong. I'm a big fan of the true crime documentaries, and I know they drive you nuts and it's not really your thing, but it is for me. And it's astounding how often you look at these cases where people have been convicted on evidence that was either paper thin or the result of somebody within a position of authority that is supposed to be looked at in a respected way, flat out lying, just because it fits the narrative that they've already put into their head. They're not convicting based on evidence. They are making the evidence fit the person they want it to fit.
Speaking of that officer that is now on paid leave on pension that falsified the evidence, they've already released 10 people due to this, because
you mean 10 people who were convicted?
Correct. They overturned. No, I mean, even anything he touched, because if anything that was used by evidence, they went back, is now not just by association. They went back, took a look at it, and all of a sudden, yeah, maybe we need to let these people out, as opposed to it getting retried in the public face. Because,
Right.
there are attorneys out there that were foaming at the mouth, ready to take the case of any of these people that were convicted on this police officer's testimony, because then they could sue for damages, and you're suing an entire city, and by proxy, everyone that lives there and pays taxes. But I digress.
Right. And I do want to point out here, and again, just making sure we are very clear, for those officers who are there doing the work and doing the real job and doing it right, absolute kudos. And I do respect those individuals who are trying to do the job right. But it's really disheartening and creates, I think, a huge lack of trust within a field that should hopefully be able to have a reasonable amount within, because of these individuals who just could give a shit less, and they have no value for the human lives and families that they are affecting, because they want to take these shortcuts and because they don't really give a shit about anybody but themselves or their thin blue line.
And you could make the case that maybe they become jaded, that maybe they see some things that should have gone another way, maybe some people that should have gone behind bars, and they take the mentality they've got to do what they got to do.
That's true. That is true.
I am not going to justify that. That is not me justifying. That is me explaining it.
That's human nature, though.
Here's my problem. And here's why I have respect for no one on that police force. Because the asshole that did this, they did not arrest. He is out sipping margaritas, getting paid by the same community that he fucked over. So, if those cops want respect, arrest the son of a bitch, put him behind bars, let him have a fair trial, put him in another city where there's not going to be any chance of taint, and let the facts play out. 2 people lost their lives due to his negligence, and it wasn't even negligence. It was intentional. Did he intend to kill these people? I'm not making that case. But by his action, 2 people are now dead. And if you're on the side of the cops, 5 people were injured because of this raid. And a dog's dead. I mean, we definitely can't.
Well, you don't want to leave PETA out. Come on.
Yeah, we don't want to leave PETA out. And I'm a dog lover. I'm not making light of that. If someone killed my dog.
Oh, you'd flip out.
Yes, I would absolutely flip the fuck out. That's a member of my family in my mind. But it's very hard for me to swallow the not all cops when shit like this happens and this guy's still walking around amongst us.
No, I please understand, I completely agree with you there. And we've had discussions on that fact about how enraging that is and how frustrating that is. For me, it ties back into the point of any other profession, any other individual in any other profession would be held accountable for lying, for having a detrimental impact on other people's lives, causing injury, causing death, lying on the stand, falsifying information, falsifying facts. There would be retribution. There would be consequences of some sort laid out, as opposed to, hey, yeah, we're going to need to accept your resignation early, but don't worry, you got your pension. I mean, that boggles my mind that because he happened to be within a specific profession, the consequences are different.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine if let's flip this around and make this individual a private security guard. They'd be in jail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They would absolutely be in jail right now. And that's my problem. When the uniform you wear gives you some form of immunity, we've got a problem. Give me one of those. Granted, I would never wear one, but there are times when I think I want to kill people. I don't mean that quite literally, but would it be nice to take someone that you really hate and just fuck with them? Pull them over for no reason, hold them by the side of the road, make them do sobriety tests just cause.
Well, as you've pointed out in the past as well, when you have this lack of follow through, lack of consequence being the new norm because of this position being what it is to the people, then you're creating a circumstance and a position of power, I should say, that is going to start drawing specific personalities that you may not want in that position that was originally supposed to be something else.
Yeah, if you don't want I think the analogy I used was for my grandfather. If you don't want the bugs by the door, turn the fucking light off because it's going to attract bugs at night, obviously. Anyway, enough about Houston, but it ties into something that did happen this week. President Trump signed an order that made May the 15th, National Peace Officers Memorial Day. This is a day where we commemorate the officers that have fallen in the line of duty. Other than it being an executive order to make something a holiday where if you have an American flag, you need to fly it at half-mast, actually for the entire week, not just for the day. I think that's correct, and if someone wants to correct me, that's fine. But I know at least that day, they are asking, not requiring. But just we go back to the beginning where I was the only one that wasn't standing for the national anthem. If you're the only business not flying half staff, you can imagine the repercussions you would suffer. But he gave a speech at the memorial, and of course, there's a lot of the law enforcement community there. And I think you were able to grab the specific quotes, if I remember.
I was. We actually kind of need to look into see if we might be able to grab the audio on these and start sharing those. Just because, I mean, I like to think of myself as a decent orator, but you just can't duplicate the idiosyncrasies within Trump's speech. But anyway, I digress.
I don't want to lose listeners. Let's not put Trump on here.
Well, everyone needs to laugh once in a while. But no, and sometimes it's more powerful hearing it come from their mouths. But anyway, what he said during this speech was relating not necessarily to having this day established for peace officers, but more the direction he's wanting to go, I should say, in regards to anyone who takes action in any way or resists police officers in any way. So what it was, he said that the ambushes and attacks on our police must end, and they must end right now. We believe that criminals who murder police officers should immediately, with trial, get the death penalty, but quickly. The trial should go fast. Applause here.
Yeah, I'll do it for you.
Yeah, no, let's not. It's got to be fair, but it's got to go fast. More applause. No, don't. And that's happening. Fair but fast, right? Fair but fast. This guy loves his adjectives. My God. I'm very proud to have sent to all of the police departments all over the country hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars worth of military equipment that wasn't being used. Beautiful, wonderful, safe, great equipment that wasn't being used. All these wonderful, amazing, beautiful, great, grand, adjectives describing not only the fact that anyone who dares resist or stand up to a police officer in any way is going to be quickly and efficiently, fastly,
but fairly,
with trial, given the death penalty. And hey, just to make sure we have some added security, they're given fucking military equipment. Military grade equipment to police. Okay, yeah, I'll let you take it from there.
There was another section of that quote that was really important here.
Oh, the dangerous criminal?
Yeah,
okay.
that thing you read to me.
That, this means that these are the dangerous criminals that must be punished to the fullest extent of the law. That's the only language they understand. To more applause. And those who file false police reports should face full legal consequences. Note who is missing in that conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, what's missing from that conversation is very similar that was missing in the original inventory from that shootout. The .357 Magnum was never recovered. It wasn't listed in the original inventory.
Oh, we're back on. Okay, sorry.
No, we're
I
not.
thought we left Houston behind.
We did leave Houston behind, but that reminded me that when you said left out, I'd forgotten to even mention that part. That if you look at the original inventory of what they pulled from the home, there's no .357 Magnum. Now, the guns that were in his safe, they were inventoried. Mm-hmm. Not the .357 Magnum. And It's not at the scene either. But...
Well, tying back into that one, I just want to make sure that last line is what really got me on that. Dangerous criminals must be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Great. Cool. That's why we have the trial system and the judicial system that we do. Those who file false police reports, guarantee you that will never include police officers filing false reports.
Absolutely. And that's
falsifying evidence, falsifying testimony, never going to be included. And God knows they're not going to be considered dangerous when, quite frankly, in my opinion, they are among the most dangerous because they are in a position to royally fuck anybody that they choose to do so.
They're worse than the mafia. At least with a mafia person, you may have them hunt you down, like if you harm one of them. But like here, you're getting the death penalty for defending yourself. Because the likelihood of you getting exonerated while defending yourself against one of these assholes that just made up evidence, it's unlikely. So what do you do as a citizen? I mean, what is this telling you? What is the message?
As a citizen in that circumstance, you are deemed and viewed as a dangerous criminal. And the person sitting on that stand, because of the nature of their position and the uniform that they are wearing, are automatically deemed to be trustworthy, to be reliable, to be the person to be respected, and their words adhered to.
An attack on the king's men is an attack on the king himself.
Right.
Yeah, that's a hard nut to swallow. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've already got problems, and that's why I wanted to see what your answer was before I went down that road. But yeah, I mean, what do we do as citizens? You can't defend yourself. If you do defend yourself, you're going on trial. It's going to be fair, but it's going to be fast. My ass. It'll be fast, but I doubt it's going to be fair. Just because you are facing a system to which these people, to protect their own, can plant evidence. It was, I think it was Baltimore PD, where they searched some of the lockers, the police lockers, and the police cruisers, and they found that several of the patrol officers had toy guns in their possession. And why would they have toy guns? Keep in mind, this wasn't for Christmas. Do you know why they had toy guns?
They could play around and cops and run, pew, pew.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. That's cute, but no, they weren't having Nerf wars. I don't think so. With the neighborhood less fortunate. Well, they were, but it was something completely different, unfortunately, not to be crass. They were using these to plant guns on people they shot, so they could say that if they didn't have a weapon, that they thought they had a weapon, and there you have it. That was Baltimore PD. Of course, they came under a lot of fire for that, and just because Baltimore PD did it doesn't mean all cops do it, but the fact that Baltimore PD does it lends credibility to the idea that it's at least plausible. If they're willing to do it, they can't be the only ones. They could, but it's not very likely.
Right.
So hearing this, and not to mention the thunderous applause, so to speak, that's coming from this group, and granted, they're all law enforcement supporters, which what else would we expect from them? It's kind of terrifying. You know, at any time, hell, in the middle of recording this, a door could be kicked down, and in a minute, you're that dangerous criminal. And what message does this put into our law enforcement community's mind? What is operating in the back of their head?
I think it really starts coming down to an us versus them with everything. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I've met police officers who are great people, and granted, it's been in the past, so I mean, it's not in recent times, but I have no doubt that there are wonderful individuals who believe in what they're doing and who I believe are honest, hardworking individuals. I think it's starting to attract that more undesirable element more and more as the infallible power of the position increases. You know, power typically does not attract the people who should have it.
No. Because the people that no one should have it, but least of all the people that want it. Looking at this from my perspective, it reinforces the mentality that there's a war on cops. So we would think that there would be a lot of police officers that are being shot and not a lot of civilians. I bet if I was to wager, Evelyn has some stats that say poo-poo on that.
Well, I don't know why I would have researched that, and it's not like we knew we were going to be talking about this.
Don't tell our secrets.
Well, no, I honestly, going into this, I didn't figure the number was going to balance out in any way. It's not. So this wasn't where I looked and went, whoa, this is a surprise in any way. But anyway, going back to 2018, I believe within the U.S., there was a total of 163 police deaths, 52 of which were by gunfire, 6 were struck by vehicles, 9 were vehicular assault. So I'm assuming that the struck by vehicle was perhaps accidental as opposed to the other one being an intentional hit. Mm-hmm. And 3 just by physical assault. So far in 2019, there have been 43 deaths in the line of duty, 19 of which were by gunfire, 7 struck by vehicle, 2 vehicular assault. So comparatively, in 2018, 992 people were shot by police. And so far, there have been 342 people shot by police this year.
Now, what I find interesting about the stats is that's just who have been shot by police, but not harmed by police. They don't include any of the assault. Just like they include in the stats of...
It's because it's impossible to separate what was assault and what was resisting arrest and injuring themselves in the process of being arrested.
You read my mind. Absolutely. And one of the funny things, I got to see the chart that she was referencing, and it's actually from the Fallen Officers Memorial page, something along those lines, something along those lines. But a large percentage of the deaths, like close to a quarter, were heart attacks. Just for whatever reason, I don't know if they were chasing someone and died of a heart attack or what. I'm not going to insert any donut jokes there, but
right. And the numbers that we were referencing before, just so you are clear, are outside attacks causing the death.
Yes, absolutely. We didn't include any of the statistics where it was a non-violent encounter. Some of them were falls, for instance, that killed people or whatever else. It seems lopsided, in my opinion, especially when you consider, just how vitriolic they make this war on cops sound. They have billions of dollars of military equipment. They have bulletproof vests, which we can't have. They have weaponry that we can't have. They have powers that we don't have. But yet there's a war on them. You almost think that the narrative is being pushed so that more people are okay when they see this in the headline. And that's what, over 2 a day?
It's more justifying the strong-arming tactics that are being used against the public.
That's a good point.
But not only that, but I also think it ties back into what kind of spurned us on this not spurned us, but got us started on this whole episode, was taking a look at how much of the image of police as a position has become a cult of personality.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely has. But before we dive into that, and that's, I think, going to be an interesting discussion, the justification for the strong arm tactics, I think you're absolutely hitting something that's very big there. What better way to justify the increased expenditure and the increased firepower and powers, whether it be stop and frisk, whether it be violating the Fourth Amendment? What better way to cement that this is okay in the mind of society, in the mind of populace, than to show that these people need these powers because they're getting brutalized all the time?
Hence, it's a progression. It's all a progression. Had you outfitted police officers with the type of equipment that they are being given now 20 years ago, it would have been, whoa, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
What the hell? This isn't cool. You got to stop this. Especially back in the mid-90s when there were the race riots going on and the Rodney King deals happening. Had you outfitted officers around that time with the kind of equipment they have now, imagine how the public would respond. It has to be a slowly progressive thing to shift the mindset around into justifying why they have this, and that this is not to be used against you in any way. This is to protect you and to keep us safe in the process of protecting you.
Yeah, we're people just like you. We're members of society. We have wives and kids and husbands we want to go to.
Just no consequence when we royally fuck you over.
Yeah, if you just happen to be on the other side of the battering ram. So a hearkening back to the shifting Overton window, as it were. But, okay, you said something about cult of personality. Where did you want to go with this?
Well, first, I kind of wanted to explain it. I mean, not all of us, but anyone old enough like me knows that song that was in the 90s. I'm not going to sing it. I'm not that mean. I'm not cruel like you and going to make people's ears bleed. But just to clarify, what exactly is a cult of personality? Cult of personality arises, and this is, if you want to check it out, I think we kind of pulled this from Wikipedia. Not the most reliable, but good for kind of overall definitions. It's when a country's regime or sometimes individuals will use techniques including mass media, propaganda, a larger lie, spectacle, patriotism in there, as well as government organized demonstrations and rallies to create an idealized, heroic, or worshipful image, often through unquestioning flattery or praise. So meaning it's held in an idealized position, or a job, or an individual, or a group is held. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I'm just more digesting the definition there while I'm doing that. Bonus points. Who's saying cult of personality.
I'm so not playing Jeopardy right now.
Oh, damn.
I have the song playing. Like, it's going to be stuck in my head all day now. I can't get rid of it, but I don't remember.
In living color.
Okay. I like the show. Never really listened to the band. So.
They're two completely different things.
Yes, I know they are two completely different things. So I'm saying I like the show. I didn't listen to the band. I just know that song because it was on the radio all the damn time.
I was the other way around. I liked the band. I thought they were pretty damn cool. And they were breaking through. But again, this is not a musical podcast. I digress. My apologies again, guys.
No. But let me get back to, if I may, the overall cult of personality was spread. Anyway, sorry, let me get back to the cult of personality really quick just to make sure we're back on track here. The cult of personality, the ability to do that kind of fell out in Europe and North America during the 18th and 19th centuries as more secular and democratic ideas made it more difficult for monarchs to kind of keep that aura of the birthright by God, the divine
authority.
Right, divine authority. Now, as the development of mass media, such as radio, enabled political leaders to project more positive images of themselves to the masses, it was basically back again during the 20th century that this cult of personality was able to really create some of the most notorious personality cults, I should say. And these are often in the form, and I love this phrase, of political religion.
Yeah, I like the phrase. I don't like the outcome.
Terrifying outcome, but an interesting thought in itself, because politics in themselves are kind of a religion. You have your secular belief, and that's it.
Well, just like we talked about in the beginning of the episode, that was a religious experience for the people that were going through it. You had your hymn playing. You had your specific motions. Everyone faced the same way. They put their hands over their heart. If there's not symbology or symbolism in that particular act, don't laugh at me.
No, I was going to say, I'd take symbology. That's fine.
God, my biggest critic over here. But if that's not symbolic, we'll use all three versions of the word. If that's not symbolic, I don't know what is. And then you have, let's go back to the divine authority. You have to think that it's almost necessary, or it was necessary for civilizations to be based on this divine authority. Now, I'm going to make a case here. Now, whether or not you believe I can present enough evidence, because there's nothing hard that I could find as far as like a written paper or anything. When I was researching this, it's a thought that came up towards the end, but I have to think that on some level, as humans, we realize that no one is superior to ourselves. So we had to create this monolithic, mythical structure in order to control people. And it's not just the United States, obviously. It's just a different form.
Well, no, it's been throughout history. We create our own hierarchies. You have to have that chain of command that works down within a family unit when you have kids, which I think is one of the only times it's necessary in order to keep children safe. Mm-hmm. But again, that same idea is recreated on the grander social scale. Right, that's why we have this hierarchy, to keep you safe.
Yeah, exactly, to keep me safe. But yeah, and I think it does root itself within the familial unit. Then you step out to the tribal unit. You know, I'm thinking back to the times of nomads or even small villages. And then from there, the regional, and then you just keep going bigger, bigger, bigger until you have what the conspiracy theorists call the New World Order. But we're not going down that path. We'll stay a little bit more focused. But looking through some of the ancient mythological and mythical structures, it appears that at first, on the grander scope, they have to appeal to your belief of wonderment and bewilderment. There has to be things that are out there that you can't explain, that you can't do, that you need something larger than yourself to be able to accomplish. Whether you look at this in the ancient Roman, Greek, or some of the primitive cultures, we call them primitive, but there's going to be a time someone's going to call our culture primitive.
Right, we haven't really evolved. We've just changed the names around.
Yeah, exactly. But if we look at these ancient civilizations, they had these myths to first explain the unexplained. And it even goes insofar as religion. You know, how did we get here? How did the earth appear? Why are we here? Why are we sentient? Why are we different than
It's
the
answering the
animals?
whys. It provides the answers for the whys as much as we can.
As much as we can. And you can imagine groups of people sitting by the fire trying to figure this out and coming up with stories they all agree to. But you have this large, overarching, this is why. And then, because you're able to answer this question, now you are granted authority, whether it be on a subconscious or a conscious level. From that point, you are able to pass on that authority to the demigods or to your representatives, whether you're secular or whether it's religious in its nature. In the secular side, it would be, we've got this overarching government. There's no way you can feed yourself. There's no way you can protect yourself from invaders. There's no way you can build your roads.
Which takes you back down to the next step down, which is going to be your enforcement.
Enforcement. These are our agents. Because you can't do any of this, we are the divine in your lives, and you owe us tithing in the form of taxes. On the religious side, it would still be called tithing or offerings. And then these are the people that we have granted a portion of our authority to. And any attack or assault on them is an attack or an assault on us. And just to remind you, here are some stories.
Right, but this is where the cult personality really comes into play. When you start having the police officers, when you have that enforcement. In fact, and I think this is going to be my episode of quotes because I found one that summed it up so much better than I could. There's an author by the name of Thomas A. Wright, and W-R-I-G-H-T. And Mr. Wright wrote, I had to put that out there. The cult of personality phenomenon refers to the idealized, even godlike public image of an individual consciously shaped and molded through constant propaganda and media exposure. As a result, one is able to manipulate others based entirely on the influence of public personality. The cult of personality perspective focuses on the often shallow external images that many public figures cultivate to create an idealized and heroic image.
So they become the heroes.
They are the heroes. They are that idealized version of what we should be, who are held to a higher, I don't think they're held to a higher standard. They should be, but are held to a higher level of respect and authority than the rest of us receive.
So the correlation for me would be like calling back to the ancient Greek myths. The
demigods.
You turn them into Hercules. You turn them into Achilles. You turn them into... insert whoever you want the myth to be about. But these stories are twofold. One, this is what happens when you cross authority, all these absolutely horrible things. And then here's these great things that these people can accomplish, but only they can accomplish them because they have been granted authority by us.
Right.
They are worthy, whether you go the religious aspect or the secular aspect. You look at...
Either way, you're looking at apotheosis.
Yes.
Either way, which is to deify, it's the glorification of a subject to like a divine level.
So if... larger
than life, emphasis on the good as opposed to the bad.
And I would say that we absolutely have that with our people in uniform. You know, I don't have a problem with a firefighter. I don't have a problem with a paramedic.
Here's my thing. And this is what on a personal level bothers me. Should there ever be an emergency, should there ever be a situation that my daughters are involved in when I'm not there and they're in a public place, I want them to be able to go to a police officer with a reasonable expectation of trust and dependability that they're going to do the right thing. And it's kind of creepy when we're getting to a point where what if something is misinterpreted? What if something that they say is and what if that power is not used in the way it should be? I don't know. Like I said, I think it's drawing more of the wrong element to the position of power where it's being used in ways that it should not be. And where we don't have the ability to reasonably defend ourselves or reasonably expect that although they are people just as we are and capable of messing up just as much as we are, they are not held accountable in the same way that we are, despite everything else being the same. But the fact that they wear a uniform and have a little metal badge on their shirt changes it. That bugs me.
It does me too. And you would like to think that, yes, you could send your kids to the police officer, and I think they would be okay.
I do too. And let me be clear on that. And in case of emergency, if they're approached or something, I think they're going to be fine. But like we were talking with my sister Sophia last week, what happens in the case where it's a he said, she said with her sons in the future?
He fucked.
Whichever, however.
No, I'm just saying he's fucked.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you said he. I was like, yes, I know we were talking about sex, but I'm not going to think about my nephews in that way because, ew. Anyway, it's just, I mean, God, what if they're in, what happened with those, the Duke University lacrosse players? They had the accusation laid out. Mm-hmm. I know this has been a few years now. There was some stripper at a party and they had the wrong guy as a DA who was looking for re-election and wanting to win votes with minority crowd. And they completely threw any reasonable investigation out the window. And the police helped along the way where no real act, what you would hope to see, correct police work being done very quickly. This ended up getting to a point where they were almost at trial. And these 3 kids who had done nothing were almost sent to prison for years just for a political agenda. It's scary when you get to that point where, I mean, God, what if that happens to me or my kids or my husband just through being in the wrong circumstance at the wrong time with the wrong individuals trying to portray themselves in a specific light?
Or even if you've done everything right, but you're just targeted by the wrong person. Yeah,
it's scary when you have that much power within a single profession, when there's no checks and balances and there's no accountability, real accountability, when somebody abuses that power or does not perform the job in the way that they should. Yeah. That's what it's coming down to for me anyway. And again, I don't want anybody listening to this to, oh man, you guys are just a bunch of cop haters. Again, absolutely not. You know, I think that there are a great many who are in that position that want to do good and want to help people and want to protect people and be there in those instances when we really need someone coming in. And it's just, I'm concerned that those individuals are now becoming more of the minority.
They are. And what's really, there's a lot of things that are off here, but let's just say I was to walk into an Apple store and I had a really bad experience with the customer service representative right there. Now, when I walk out of there and there's no resolution, in my mind, all of Apple is tainted. Even though no other employee in there did me harm, caused me grief, I have a negative view towards Apple because he is a representative of Apple. Why don't we take the exact same stance?
One bad apple ruins. Okay, sorry.
I worked so hard on that. You just ruined it. There was a reason I went through Apple. That's fine. You just have to be that spoil sport. Yes. Why is it we don't look towards the police department the exact same way, or the presidency, or the politicians? One bad apple could spoil the bunch. But instead of removing the apple, we just argue, well,
we're just going to put this apple over here right now. Just don't mind that apple. We just moved it out of your way.
But we're going to keep paying for it. All right. I think that's probably a good enough place to wrap up unless there's anything else that you wanted to discuss.
No, I think, well, I'm not good, but I mean, I voiced some grievances, so there we go.
You did, and you ruined my joke. Like, I was working so hard on that, and you knew it.
I did not. I did not know that one. I did not know that one.
Anyway, thanks for listening. We definitely appreciate it. We'll see you next episode.
Always looking back over your shoulder, waiting around to make your move. Don't hold back, come on and get down to it. Live your life the way that you want to.